Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. 3 months after I died, my husband married his secretary of over 30 years. Our family and friends all felt relieved, and even a little gratified. They sighed and said that Director Howard had only ended up with a rural girl back then, because he was sent to the countryside. If college entrance exams had been reinstated just a year earlier, he and Secretary Claire would have been together long ago and had their happy ending. My son and Claire are nothing like me or my mother. They're educated and cultured. Now that my father is in middle age, he finally gets to enjoy a proper marriage. Even my elderly parents held Claire's hand like she was their own daughter, and said our girl had nothing going for her. We were afraid she'd end up being a bad influence on the kids. But now, with someone like Secretary Claire, a valedictorian and role model, they'll all grow up to be educated people, even top scorers like her. I can still clearly remember in the final moments of my life, Claire stood beside me wearing a clean beige skirt suit, her hair curled in trendy waves, holding a bouquet of blooming lilies. She leaned toward my ear and said slowly, "Sister-in-law, back then, I used your exam results to get into college." And just like that, I opened my eyes again. I was back in that clay-roofed house in the countryside, living with Howard again. Red double happiness symbols still clung to the paper-paned windows. My mom barged in, threw the broom on the ground and sneered. "Enough with the act. I knew it. You're just jealous that that educated city girl Claire has brains and pairs well with little Howard. You're just copying her by signing up for the college exam to make him notice you." I thought of Claire's final confession, and my lips curled into a silent, cold smile. Both Claire and Howard were city kids sent down to the countryside, and they lived in our home. I fell for Howard at first sight. Everyone in the village knew I was determined to marry him, no matter what it took. I pretended I hadn't overheard Claire confessing her feelings to Howard. I still used every trick I had to get him to marry me. I failed the entrance exam, but Claire shocked everyone when she earned the top score in the province, and she and Howard both got into the same university. After graduation, they were conveniently assigned to the same workplace and spent the next 30 years together. Claire ate meals at my house, took my exam results, outlasted me, and inherited the successful husband I had worked so hard to support. While I was still caught up in these thoughts, Howard returned from working in the fields. He saw me just crawling out of bed and frowned. "Didn't you say you were going to take the exam? It's only a few days away and you're still slacking." I looked him up and down, covered in dirt, and knew instantly he'd been helping Claire again. After marrying me, my dad gave him the easiest job on the production team, but Howard chose to help Claire instead so she could focus on her studies. I ignored him, brushed past, and walked out the door. He looked stunned, as if surprised I was suddenly so cold to him. I picked up a hoe and went down to the fields. My dad, the production team leader, always saved the best, easiest jobs for our family. When I found him, he was hiding in the shade, smoking. I told him directly, "Give Howard the brick hauling job." He gaped. "You want little Howard to haul bricks?" I nodded firmly. "Just this once. I'm not going to let those two cheaters live the sweet life. Brick hauling earns a lot of work points and maybe even bonus points for the college exam. Howard is my husband. Why would I harm him?" My dad didn't understand all that, but the moment I said it might help Howard get into college, he believed me completely. That very day, my dad announced the job change to the team. As expected, Howard's face stiffened, but he didn't object. That night, I overheard Claire rushing over to him. "Oh my God, Howard," she said tearfully. "Hauling bricks is already exhausting, and now you're still helping me weed the field. We both need to prepare for the college entrance exam. If you wear yourself out, how could I possibly bear that?" Howard answered in a low voice, "I'm confident about the exam. Just focus on your revision." Behind the wall, I rolled my eyes so hard they nearly stuck. What a shameless act. Even Susie, who usually kept to herself, muttered, "Claire is something else. She knows you're studying too, but she won't even say a word to her dad to help you out. She's clearly terrified you might pass." I sneered silently. Hypocrite. Howard didn't respond. Instead, he gave her a few review tips and quickly walked off. I returned to our room a minute before Howard and sat on the bed waiting for him. When he walked in, he hesitated, looking uncomfortable, and said, "Aren't we both taking the college exam? Maybe we should wait a bit longer." In my last life, he used that excuse again and again to avoid getting close to me. After the exam, I had to practically force myself on him before he finally gave in. Then I got pregnant. He used the long distance and bumpy travel as an excuse to stop me from following him to university. And so I waited for 4 long years while I toiled alone in the countryside raising our son. He must have been spending every day strolling around campus with Claire, going on dates. I gave a flat sigh, turned around, and climbed back under the covers to sleep. Howard frowned, an unusual move, and surprisingly took the initiative to speak. "You go to work every day, but don't review at all. I'm telling you, the college entrance exam isn't as easy as you think." I scoffed. "If I don't work, who's going to earn the work points for me? I'm not like some people who've got others falling over themselves to help them." He let out a heavy, frustrated breath. "Susie, what are you even accusing me of? Claire's mother is sick. If she doesn't get into college this time, she might never get another chance to go back home. I'm helping her for Auntie Claire's sake." I laughed bitterly inside. "Don't worry about it. Your Auntie Claire's got a longer life than I do. The way things are going, she'll probably be the one to arrange your wedding with Claire one day." He stood there waiting, expecting me to argue, maybe cry or throw a fit, but I didn't. I just rolled over and started snoring gently. Before dawn the next day, Howard left for work at the brickyard. I glanced outside at the scorching sun and decided to stay home and study in the morning. I'd go weed the fields in the afternoon when it was a bit cooler. But it hadn't even been long when the yard suddenly filled with a commotion. A crowd of villagers came in carrying a stretcher, and lying on it, pale as a ghost, was none other than Howard. "Susie, your man fainted at the brickyard from exhaustion," someone shouted. Before I could even move, Claire burst out of the youth dormitory next door. "Howard!" I rolled my eyes and pulled her away. "He's not dead. No need to panic. Someone will still help you with your chores." Claire recoiled like she'd been slapped and pointed at me, furious. "Susie, you knew Howard needed to study for the entrance exam, and you still asked the team leader to send him to the brickyard. He's been waking up before dawn to work, then staying up late studying. How do you expect him to handle that?" Feigning confusion, I said, "There are plenty of other educated youths at the brickyard taking the exam. They haul bricks in the morning and study in the afternoon. Why does Howard have to stay up all night?" The crowd started murmuring, annoyed. "Yeah, where was Howard in the afternoon? Last time I saw him, he was out weeding in the fields. Isn't that a woman's job?" Claire's face stiffened. Just then someone added, "Susie hasn't gone to work yet today. Don't tell me Howard was out there helping her." Claire tried to compose herself and turned to me. "Susie, it's one thing for you to take the exam with just a middle school education. But how could you make Howard do your work? You're wasting a potential college student." People started chiming in, calling me lazy, saying I faked the exam as an excuse to stay home. Claire's lips curled with the faintest smile. I smiled too. "That's right. He's my husband. Isn't it only natural that I tell him what to do? Besides, which of the men in Oak Tree Village faints from a little work like he does? How is he going to be a proper son-in-law of our village?" "Ha. Uncles, what do you think?" Everyone suddenly remembered. Howard wasn't sent some high and mighty intellectual from the city anymore. He was now Oak Tree Village's son-in-law. "Susie's right," someone said. "What man in our village can't carry a load or swing a hoe? He's like this because he never did enough real work." I thanked the villagers again and added, "But he's going to need to rest for a bit. He's not in good shape right now. I'll take over his work this afternoon. I'll be out weeding." As for everything else, I glanced at Claire, whose expression was as sour as spoiled milk. Well, she'll just have to count on herself. After lunch, I grabbed a hoe and headed to the fields. Under the blazing sun, Claire's frail figure was already swaying. She barely swung the hoe a few times before collapsing to the ground. "Claire, are you okay?" someone cried out. "Those hands of yours were meant for writing, not hard labor." It was Danny, the son of the village secretary, still orbiting around her, just like in my previous life. Word was he later went into business and made it big. I wondered if Claire regretted not choosing him back then. Just as I was thinking this, Danny rushed over, pointing at me. Susie, you're just jealous Claire's educated. You're scared that if she gets into college, she'll go off with Howard. So you purposely gave him such heavy work. I set the hoe down and gave him a small, cold smile. Are you seriously that dumb? Do you want Claire to get into college and go live happily ever after with Howard? Danny froze. I hopped onto the tractor and headed back, hearing Claire call after him. Danny, didn't you say you were going to help me? All I heard was the village fool shout. Oh shoot. Sorry Claire. My stomach hurts. I need to go to the latrine first. Take your time. Weeding will get done eventually. I turned and headed back to the house, where I enjoyed a peaceful, restful sleep. The next morning, Claire's room was still pitch dark. As I lowered my gaze to the floor, I suddenly met a pair of shocked, conflicted eyes. You're awake? I asked. Howard was staring at me intently, his eyes scanning the walls and layout of the room. He suddenly sat up, eyes wide, and looked at the calendar. Just then, a heavy thud echoed from the courtyard, someone collapsing, and then came scattered, broken sobs. I opened the door and saw Claire on the ground, her face covered in yellow mud, crying her eyes out. This time, Howard had taken on the job himself with Danny helping out. Together, they had worked Claire to exhaustion. From the corner of my eye, I caught Howard instinctively reaching out to help her up, only to hesitate and pull his hand back at the last second. When Claire heard Howard call her name with such uncharacteristic intimacy, she froze for a moment, then began sobbing even harder. Howard, she whimpered. Please ask Susie to give me a little time to study. I really do want to go back to the city and take care of my mom. I swear I have no other motives. She cried like her heart was breaking. I thought Howard would scowl at me and scold me like before, but after a brief pause he surprised me by saying, Susie, I'll take you with me to college. Stop making a scene. I raised my brows slightly. How strange. In my last life, he had never once compromised at this point. But what shocked me even more was Claire. She didn't even try to hide her disbelief. Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at Howard. Are you serious? His expression grew more complicated. He turned to her and said, I'll ask my father-in-law to give you a few days off so you can focus on reviewing. Let this be my way of making it up to you in this life. With that, he turned and went back inside. I watched his back, feeling that his words didn't quite sit right. When I returned to our room, Howard stood up with a sigh and said, Satisfied now? I promised to take you to college, so don't bother Claire anymore, okay? And stop pretending to study. I know you're just doing it to be spiteful. Once I'm in college, I'll rent you a room off campus. Then we'll invite Claire to dinner, and you two can make peace. His tone was patient and persuasive, but inside I felt completely cold. How did Howard know Claire would get into the same university as him again? I thought back to his strange yet familiar behavior. Could it be he was reborn too? 3 days before the college entrance exam, Claire started acting sneaky. That night, I secretly followed her to the backyard of the village secretary's house. There Danny was flattering her. Don't worry, Claire. All the test papers from town go through my fourth uncle's hands. I'll make sure he switches out the top student's paper for yours. Claire frowned and muttered. Too bad the best student in town is that Susie girl. Danny didn't pick up on the bitterness in her tone, and blinked innocently. Yeah, who else would I be talking about? I wouldn't lie to you. But instead of cheering up, Claire looked even more upset. She scoffed and turned to leave. That's when I finally understood how she had stolen my exam results in my past life. Claire. Danny, neither of you is getting away with it this time. 3 days later, I sat in the exam room for the college entrance exam. Howard was seated in front of me, calm and composed, clearly breezing through the questions. The questions were exactly the same as last time. He remembered them all. Claire sat to my left, steady and confident, just like before. With Danny's promise backing her, she had nothing to worry about. I looked down at the test paper and smiled faintly. Then I filled the entire answer sheet with deliberately wrong answers. Since you wanted to switch scores with me so badly, how about a nice fat 0 as a surprise? Back home, My dad set up 2 huge tables in the courtyard with a celebratory feast of freshly butchered pork and invited all the educated youths to drink. Howard was radiant with pride. After all, this was his second chance at life, and he had aced the test effortlessly. He was clearly on track for a different life this time. Claire was glowing with joy too. The villagers all nodded and whispered, "Looks like Claire's definitely getting into college. Once she does, she can go back to the city and won't have to suffer in the countryside anymore." Everyone began congratulating her early, raising their glasses and celebrating. Some nosy villagers noticed me sitting off to the side and laughed. "Hey, we forgot to ask how Susie did on the exam." She just wanted to feel included with all the smart people. They think she can catch some culture by marrying Howard. With alcohol loosening their tongues, the crowd grew more reckless with their words. I say Claire, the real scholar, is the one who deserves Howard. If his classmates back in college found out his wife was just a village girl, how embarrassing would that be? Howard looked humiliated too. That night, back in our room, he used the buzz from the alcohol as an excuse to speak coldly. "Susie, when we get to the city, you should learn from Claire. Read more books. Stop obsessing over your little schemes." I chuckled faintly. Learn from her? She's just good at pretending to be some cultured woman. What education does she really have? You can't carve rotten wood, I said. Once the test scores come out, you'll see just how wide the gap is between me and your precious Claire. Without another word, he stormed off to sleep, clearly frustrated. Early the next morning, the village loudspeaker crackled to life. The college entrance exam results were out. Ever since the test, Claire had been slacking off more and more with her chores, barely pretending to work. But not a single villager or educated youth said anything. Instead, they eagerly volunteered to help her. "Claire," one villager said, "once you get into college and go back to the city, can you pull some strings and help my boy or dog get a job? Claire, could you help my son find a college girl to marry once you're there?" Claire soaked in the attention like a queen at court. Even though she found the villagers' requests petty and laughable, she still played along with pride and arrogance. "Small matters," she said haughtily. "Let's just wait for the scores to come out first. Now who's going to carry my basket home?" "I will. I'll do it." Just then, the loudspeaker on the electric pole let out a few sharp pops, then broadcast the news. The exam results were officially released. I followed Howard to the production team office. The deputy team leader came straight up and grabbed Howard's hand, beaming. "Congratulations, Howard. You're the top scorer in the entire county." Howard didn't seem surprised. He just gave a faint nod of thanks. Everyone swarmed around Claire as she entered. When they saw me standing there, some couldn't help but mock. "Well, I get why the other educated youths are here checking their scores, but what's Susie doing here? You think you actually scored as well as Claire?" I pretended not to hear them, and stepped up. "Mr. Chun," I asked the deputy leader, "is my score on the list?" He flipped through the printed pages and said, "Yes, Susie. 250 points. One of the educated youths who'd always been close with Claire couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. "Susie, this is just sad. Not only did you fail, you got exactly 250. Seriously?" The laughter and condescending looks grew louder around me. Howard, now clearly embarrassed, looked at me and muttered, "I told you to study seriously this time. Guess it doesn't matter how many chances you get. You just can't be saved." I sneered and said, "Then Mr. Chun, what about Claire? She's the pride of our village. Surely she scored higher than me, right?" Howard jumped in sharply, annoyed. "Why are you picking a fight again? Of course, Claire scored way better than you. The less you say, the less foolish you'll look. Just like in the last life, dragging me to the city only to lecture me about being an embarrassment, about not knowing the rules." In his eyes, I was always the uneducated one who humiliated him. I ignored him and kept my eyes fixed on Claire. Mr. Chun pulled out her score sheet, put on his glasses and checked it once. Then again, disbelief spreading across his face. "Mr. Chun," someone urged. "What did Claire get? Come on, let us share the good news." She couldn't have scored higher than Howard, right? Everyone stared at him, waiting expectantly. After a long pause, he finally opened his mouth, lips trembling. 0. Claire scored 0. Silence fell. 0. Someone echoed. Even the educated youth stood there stunned. Anyone who had ever taken an exam knew that even if you guessed randomly, you'd still get a few points. 0 meant she'd managed to avoid every correct answer. What kind of genius was that? I mimicked the girl who had laughed at me earlier, covering my mouth with a giggle. Congratulations, Claire. How is it that you, the pride of the village, scored even lower than a country girl like me? 250 or 0? Take your pick. The villagers exploded into laughter. This can't be, Claire stammered, her gaze snapping to Danny. Danny looked just as shocked and stared back at me. Then, without thinking, Danny blurted out, Susie, how did you end up with that score? His question only made the crowd more suspicious. I shrugged. However I did it, 250 is still better than 0, isn't it? Claire quickly reached out and covered Danny's mouth. Howard stammered. That's impossible. Why is it different this time? Where had things gone wrong? Logically, if Howard had taken Claire's place as the top scorer, then even if Claire didn't do well, she should have at least ranked second. How could she have ended up with 0? He looked at Claire, her eyes shimmering with tears that refused to fall, and remembered how in his past life he had wronged her deeply. So he took a step forward. Mr. Chun, he said, this can't be right. Claire's always been diligent. Even while working, she stayed up late studying. Maybe someone tampered with her score. As he said that, he cast a pointed glance at me. Mr. Chen's face darkened. Are you questioning the integrity of the National College entrance exam? I immediately jumped in, my tone righteous. He's got a point, Mr. Chen. What if Claire was sabotaged by someone jealous of her talent? We absolutely have to get to the bottom of this. The villagers and educated youths who had been relying on Claire's promises to help them chimed in support. Yeah, there's no way Claire scored 0. Someone must have messed with her papers. Howard turned to Claire. Don't worry, Claire. We'll get to the truth. Whoever did this, we'll find them and have them thrown in jail. At the word jail, Claire's body visibly trembled, her pupils shrinking. No, don't, she said quickly, panic rising in her voice. Please don't investigate. Everyone looked at her confused. She pleaded in a shaky voice. Maybe this is just my fate. I can always try again next year. Please don't look into it. What if we end up offending someone powerful? Her face was pale, like she was suffering some great injustice. Howard's protective instincts kicked in even harder. No way. Even if it means offending someone powerful, I'll make sure you get justice. In his past life, he had never married for 30 years just for Claire. When they finally ended up together, he died suddenly from a brain hemorrhage within a month. He still carried guilt over that. Watching Howard about to walk away and start an investigation, Claire's mind buzzed in panic. If they traced it back to Danny, or worse to her, everything would fall apart. In a flash, Claire sprinted to the riverbank, tears streaming down her face. Howard, I'd rather die than see you ruin your future for me, she cried, and then, splash, jumped straight into the water. Howard and the other male-educated youths no longer cared about finding justice. Like dumplings, they all dove into the river to save her. After that dramatic plunge, Claire was bedridden for nearly 2 weeks. Then came the day Howard received his admission letter to Beijing University. He came to me and said, Susie, Claire's asthma has gotten worse. I want to take her back to the city with me. By then, I had already figured out he had been reborn too, so none of his words surprised me anymore. I gave him a half-hearted nod. He seemed shocked that I didn't protest. A look of relief passed over his face as he sighed. Don't worry. This time, I won't fail her again. And I'll make it up to you too. Howard rented me a room off campus, but instead of doing the same for Claire, he placed her directly into the university's staff dormitory. Claire said she wants to take next year's college exam again. Howard explained it's easier for her to study at the campus library if she lives nearby. I scoffed inwardly. Claire with her 250-point brain. Even if she studied for another year, she still might not get in. I told him I wanted to take the exam again next year, too, and that I should be allowed to live in the staff dorms. Howard immediately frowned. Don't make trouble. Didn't you say before that you wanted a baby? You should start preparing. Time to think about getting pregnant. He assumed I was still holding on to that idea. That child from my past life who used to sweetly call Claire mommy. Without hesitation. Just thinking about that ungrateful little brat left me ice cold inside. In this life, he wasn't going to be born. Not a chance. That night after Howard showered, he climbed into bed trying to get close. I claimed I had my period and gently turned him down. Once he fell asleep, I slipped into the kitchen and soaked his underwear, which was hanging on the balcony, in chilly water. The next evening when Howard came home, his face was red and pale at the same time. He walked with his legs stiff and awkward, and as soon as he entered, he ran straight to the bathroom. Watching him, I couldn't help but smirk. Howard's allergic to chili peppers. His entire butt was probably inflamed by now. Susie, he whimpered. Help me get to the campus clinic. At the clinic, the doctor peeled back his pants and gave a pained expression. This is serious. With inflammation like this, you're going to have issues both urinating and defecating. Hearing that, I dropped to my knees dramatically by his bedside and cried out. What? It could affect fertility? Doctor, please don't scare me. Are you saying Howard might never be able to have children again? The other students waiting nearby turned to stare, puzzled and awkward. Still on the floor, I slapped my thigh and wailed loudly. Howard, oh, your fate is so cruel. Is this it for you? Are you really going to leave no descendants? You worked so hard to get into the top law program at Beijing University, and now you're going to throw your whole future away. I cried out. Howard's face turned beet red on the verge of exploding. He tried to sit up and cover my mouth, but his body was too stiff with pain to move. All he could do was glare at me fiercely and growl under his breath. Keep your voice down. Shut up. Around us, students started whispering. Wait, isn't that Howard from the law department? Yeah, I've heard of him. Looks like he got injured down there. Yikes. That bad? Poor guy. He won't be able to function again. Rumors spread like wildfire. From now on, Howard would no longer be known by name to his classmates. Instead, he'd be remembered by one tragic nickname, the Broken Root. Just then, his roommates came rushing in after hearing the news. One of them looked around and asked, puzzled, "Where's Howard's girlfriend? Hasn't she shown up yet?" I raised an eyebrow. Girlfriend? Another roommate clicked his tongue in annoyance. Don't get any ideas. You're not the only girl on campus who likes Howard, but as long as Claire is around, there's no way Howard would look at anyone else. You should go. She'll be here any second, and you're just going to cause trouble. Right on cue, a soft, sweet voice floated in from the hallway. Howard, is he okay? It was Claire. She rushed in, dressed like the perfect college girl, clutching 2 books in her arms. Howard's roommates tried to block me from her, but I pushed them aside easily. Claire froze when she saw me. Her face turned pale. One of the guys snapped at me. Didn't you see? Howard's real girlfriend is here now. Get out. I pointed straight at Claire. Says who? Her or Howard? The room went quiet. The roommate stammered. Well, I mean, they eat together every day. Study together, too. And Howard's never denied it, so what else is there to ask? I dropped to the floor dramatically and burst into tears again. Howard, you heartless bastard. You've been sneaking around campus with another woman behind my back. Is it because I'm just a country girl that you think I'm not good enough for you? Then why did you marry me in the first place? The crowd of students around us gasped. Howard, with his good looks and constant appearances with Claire, had long been assumed to be dating her. And now, out of nowhere, a woman claiming to be his wife. Some of the roommates rushed to comfort Claire. Others tried to pull me off the floor. You're insane. Howard never said he was married. You're just mad he doesn't want you, so you're here spreading lies and making a scene. I pulled a folded paper from my pocket and waved it in their faces. Our official marriage certificate. Well, isn't this just perfect? Howard even lied to his roommates. I guess he planned to finish college and then dump me, the poor village wife, like I never existed. You've got such a cruel heart, Howard. The certificate clearly stated our marriage and was stamped by the village committee. His roommates stared at it, dumbfounded. One of them turned to Claire. Wait, didn't I ask you before if you and Howard were dating? You didn't deny it. Claire bit her lower lip, then put on a wronged expression. Did I ever say I was dating him? You all just assume things, and now you're blaming me for it." With that, she wiped at her eyes and ran out of the room, looking like the picture of innocence wronged. The roommates all hurried after her, trying to console her. I stayed behind, surrounded by gawking students, and wailed again. That little, the moment she saw my husband couldn't have kids anymore, she flipped on him like he was trash. "But I don't care, Howard. I'll still love you even if you're barren." Howard's allergic reaction to the chili pepper had caused such severe inflammation and persistent high fever that he was transferred from the campus clinic to the city's first hospital. While he was gone, I used the key to the staff housing that he had rented for himself, and I canceled the lease on the room he'd gotten for Claire. That same night, Claire was kicked out of the staff dorm. She tried sneaking into a friend's dorm room to crash for the night, but the chaos from the medical office had already made its way around campus. In everyone's eyes, Claire was now nothing more than a shameless homewrecker. Not a single girl in the dorms was willing to take her in. With nowhere else to go, Claire finally slipped into the guard post and made a phone call. That same evening, I got a call from my father. He said he'd asked Danny to bring me some walnuts and jujubes from the village. So Danny still couldn't sit still, huh? In my last life, after Claire used my identity to get into college, Danny kept finding excuses to visit the city, always bringing recommendation letters just to see her. I had sent letter after letter through him, begging him to deliver them to Howard. Later, I found out none of them had reached him. They'd all gone straight to Claire's hands. Danny had sabotaged me every step of the way. As I was thinking about this, I heard the ringing of a bicycle bell outside the alley. I opened the door. Danny looked impatient as he shoved a cloth-wrapped bundle from his bike basket into my arms. As he turned to leave, I stopped him. "Danny," I called out. "You're going to see Claire, aren't you? She's preparing for next year's college exam. Better not go bother her right now." I pulled an envelope from my pocket. "Here's a letter she wrote to you." I said she said she'll write you one every month from now on. Dai's eyes lit up and he tore it open eagerly. Of course, the letter was written by me. In my last life, Danny had gotten drunk and bragged publicly about all the things he and Claire had done back in the countryside. I only had to scribble down a couple of made-up details, and he believed every word. The letter said Claire wanted him to go into business with her in the South and promised to marry him someday. Danny chuckled and said, "Thanks, Susie. You're the best." He pulled a $10 bill from his pocket and shoved it into my hand with a grin, then happily walked off. What I didn't expect was for Claire to show up at my door a few days later. She was still wearing that same white cotton dress, though now the autumn wind whipped around her, and she trembled, clutching her small bundle tightly. She had clearly called Danny, but he hadn't shown up for days. She'd been sleeping rough outdoors for 3 nights. Now that the weather was turning cold, she had no choice but to seek another way. "Susie," she said, "I know you hate me, but if it weren't for Howard insisting on bringing me to the city, I wouldn't be homeless like this. Please believe me. I didn't want this." I nodded slowly. "You've got a point. All right then," I continued. "I'll make some calls and arrange for someone to take you back to Oak Tree Village." Her face fell. "No, I can't. My asthma isn't fully recovered. If something happens to me back in the countryside, your dad, as the team leader, will be held responsible. I should stay here. You're preparing for the college exam anyway, right? Let me stay and take care of Howard at the hospital." I tilted my head thoughtfully. How generous of her to offer herself up like this. So be it. I went into the kitchen and mixed every spice I could find into a batch of ground chili powder. I even coated the frying pan with a layer of chili oil. The next day, Claire began what she called her daily love lunch deliveries for Howard. Howard's fever had already gone down. When he saw that his visitor was Claire, his expression dimmed slightly. "Claire, I'm sorry to trouble you." Claire smiled gently as she opened the lunchbox. "Eat up, Howard. You've gotten so thin." Smelling the fragrant dishes, Howard was reminded of how skilled Claire had been at cooking in their past life. He eagerly dug in, but halfway through he suddenly started coughing violently. Claire jumped in alarm. "Howard, slow down. Are you okay? Was it something I made? You don't like it?" Her eyes shimmered with tears full of hurt. Howard felt a wave of guilt. Of course, this time around, Claire still didn't know he was allergic to chili peppers. He didn't want to hurt her pride, so he forced himself to finish every last bite. "It's delicious," he said hoarsely. "You're the best cook, Claire." That night, the hospital called. Howard had been rushed to the emergency room. I hurried there and found Claire and Howard's roommates pacing anxiously in the hallway. When one of them saw me, he snapped, "Susie, do you even care about your husband? Claire's the one who's been sitting by his bedside this whole time. You got here later than all of us." I crossed my arms and took a bold step forward. Full village wife mode activated. "Oh really? Then maybe I should be asking Claire what she did to my husband. He was recovering just fine. Why did he collapse right after eating your food?" Claire turned red. "What are you implying, Susie?" Before she could say more, a nurse came hurrying down the hall with a lunch container in hand. "Where are the patient's family members? Didn't we clearly tell you he's allergic to chili? Why would you feed him spicy food again? Do you know how close he was to not making it?" The nurse looked directly at Claire as she spoke. Claire opened her mouth to defend herself, but I cut her off, pointing at her with fury. "Really, Claire? I took you in out of kindness. Let you stay in my home, and you can't even cook one proper meal without nearly killing my husband. You're paying for the ICU. It's hundreds of you on a day, and you're staying there until the bill is settled. If you try to run, I'll report you to the police." Back in this era, criminal liability still carried weight. Claire's eyes widened in shock. It was as if she didn't recognize me anymore. Howard's roommates looked away awkwardly. Even if they pooled their money, it wasn't enough to cover the hospital bill. Quietly, one by one, they slipped away. Claire's panic gave way to tears. "I don't have a cent. How am I supposed to pay hundreds of yuan?" "Then go borrow from your mom," I said coldly. "You're a city girl, an educated youth from the capital. Surely scraping together a few hundred yuan is easier for you than it is for a rural hick like me." I snorted. Claire's mother was just like her, always pretending to be sick and innocent. In my past life, she faked illness so often that Howard started treating her like his own mother, taking her in and looking after her personally. The neighbors all thought I was the unreasonable, loud village wife. Claire used the hospital phone to call home. But the moment her mother heard she needed money, she hung up without hesitation. Claire was just about to cry when the phone rang again. This time, her mother's cold voice came through the receiver. "You failed the college entrance exam, and now you've racked up debts. How did I raise such a useless daughter?" After cursing her out thoroughly, her mother's tone suddenly shifted. "Since you're back in the city, marry Chief Xing's youngest son. He's been waiting for you all these years. Once you're married, a few hundred yuan won't be a problem." Claire shook her head desperately. "No, Mom. Please just let me try again next year. I promise I'll get into college." "College? You couldn't even avoid a 0 on your last try. Do you know how humiliating it was for me when I asked Chief Xing to check your score for you?" Her voice snapped. "Enough. Come home and get married." The line went dead. Claire stared at me, expression empty. "Now that I'm being forced to marry, I won't be able to hang around Howard anymore. You happy now?" I gave a cold chuckle. "Don't act pitiful in front of me. You think nobody knows about that stunt you pulled with Danny? How you cheated on the college exam?" Her face went ghost white. She turned and bolted from the room in a panic. That night, Howard's fever spiked again. He started muttering deliriously, sometimes calling out for our son to peel an apple for Claire, sometimes whispering to her as if they had just gotten married. "We've only been married a year," he mumbled, "and I already can't be with you. I've let you down." I stood by his bed watching him coldly. "So he really has no guilt toward me at all, huh? Good. That means I don't have to feel guilty either." 2 weeks later, Claire showed up at the hospital wearing a bright red coat. She handed me 500 yuan. It was clear she had gotten married. Standing behind her was a fat man with a greasy face. I glanced at the room where Danny had just arrived to visit Howard at my request. Smiling, I said, "Come in, have a seat." Howard just woke up. Danny looked up and saw the fat man wrapping his arms around Claire. Something in his brain snapped. Without hesitation, he lunged at the man and punched him square in the face. "You bastard! She's my woman." All those love letters I'd forged had thoroughly brainwashed Danny into thinking he and Claire were in a relationship. The fat man reeled back from the punch, but hearing Danny's words made him furious. He turned and slapped Claire hard across the face. "You cheated on me." Howard, still half-conscious and slipping in and out between memories of his past and present lives, heard the commotion. When he saw Claire being hit, he suddenly shouted, "Claire is my wife. What are you all doing?" Everyone froze, Claire, Danny, even the fat man. The fat man's eyes went wide. "How many men have you hooked, huh? I paid 3,000 yuan as a bride price for you, and now you're screwing around." Then he turned and started punching Howard. Chaos erupted in the hospital room. I screamed theatrically and ran out into the hallway, yelling, "There's a fight in the patient room. Somebody call the police." By the time the officers arrived, Howard had already lost consciousness from the beating. The fat man and Danny were both bruised and bloodied. The cops arrested them both. One of the medics checked Howard's pulse and declared he was dead. Claire, meanwhile, had hit her head during the fight. Blood gushed from her scalp before she too passed out cold. The incident made the local paper and quickly became the city's favorite tabloid drama. A tragic love triangle turned brawl. The following year, I passed the college entrance exam and was accepted to a university in Haichen. The past was finally behind me. In this life, I was ready to start over.